All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I am excited. Oh, this could be one of the best shows we've ever done.
What?
So glad you could join us. I know it's an incredible prediction to make at the beginning of a program, but there, I've just made it. We'll start the show with an apology, actually.
What?
Which is, I know.
No, Mark's Madness.
No. It is maddening, but it is, there will be an apology to one of our listeners and viewers. In fact, I actually wrote Teacher Lori an apology
My
note.
bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wrote her an email last night. I mean, unprompted. She didn't write to me. But we had an incident yesterday, and I wanted to own it. And so we'll do that first. But then the thing that is the most very exciting thing in the first hour, Sarah Kendzior joins, bottom of the hour. And Sarah is a brilliant mind, and her reporting and her writings on Trump, on America, on the law, on our legacy, on history, they are profound. And I'm so looking forward to her joining at the bottom of our first hour. And in the second hour, the noted former federal prosecutor, now he's a defense attorney. He's one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world, and there's a lot to talk about, especially with the clear weaponization of the DOJ, the expressed desire to go after those that the President of the United States considers his adversaries, his enemies. And there is it's like a jihadism that's coming out of the White House now. And it involves the former head of the FBI, James Comey, Letitia James, these people, Adam Schiff, who Donald Trump considers his foes. He wants to vanquish them, and he wants to vanquish them by bringing the law down on them, even though it would appear that there is no legal basis to do it. And so he's literally firing prosecutors and hiring people who've never prosecuted a case before to get there and start attacking. So we'll get to David Katz chatting about that, and Sarah, I'm sure, will want to comment on that as well. So all of that still to come. I've got a law and disorder. So there's a lot to it. First into the chat today, again, zero sum. Get 'em Rhonda at 9:05. That came in. And then Rhonda, this is quite appropriate. Rhonda says, even gaslighting at Teacher Lori G on what 50% is. I was watching live, says Rhonda. Well, this is indeed where we are going to start, because yesterday on the show, something happened that we need to account for.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This falls into the category, Albert, we haven't used it a lot, but this is an official correction and apology.
Correction and apology.
Yes. I'm going to remind those who were here yesterday or listened to the show, and those who may not have seen or listened to the show yesterday, what happened. Teacher Lori, who is a regular in our chat, she is a real teacher. She's been in our meetups. She is an important contributor to the show. Very smart person, obviously. She noted that Hulu was taking its subscription price of $7.99 and increasing it to $11.99.
Yeah.
She said 50% increase. And I said, with the smirk and snide way that I say things, yeah, that is awful, but it's not 50%. I mean, come on.
And I should have known. Don't question Teacher Lori.
Kim
Just don't.
agreed with me, by the way, Albert. Kim agreed with me.
Kim, how are you?
Immediately, I should have sided with Teacher Lori. I know
Yes,
better. I know better.
And the chit person agreed with me. She chitted Teacher Lori.
Yeah.
And then
I blame you.
I So then I leaned in. Then teacher Lori comes into the chat, and here is the screen grab. Percentage increase equals new value minus old value over old value. So 12 minus 8, okay, so it's $7.99 to $11.99. So it's 12 minus effectively 8, right? Just rounding up the penny. 12 minus 8 over 8 equals 0.5, which is 50%.
Yeah.
Taught this to sixth graders, she said.
Why are you yelling?
You morons at the Mark Thompson show, you can't even. And so I then realized, of course, we were off the air by the time I realized it, that the chat blew up. Here's JP Hollywood. From 8 to 12 is 50%.
Yeah.
1.5 times 8 is 12. 50% increase, said Jennifer. $4 is 50% of $8, said Heather Kennedy. Donna Holmes said, Teacher Lori is right.
Why are you yelling?
Daniel Martin said, Mark, 50% of 8 is 4. Do the math again. And now, even today, people are saying, how is this not even painfully obvious? So it is indeed the case that Lori was right and we were wrong. And I think I go full tubing on this, Albert.
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Exactly. I apologize for...
I stand corrected.
Exactly. I really do.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
I am apologizing. I suck at math, and Teacher Lori was correct. I suck at math, and I knew that Teacher Lori was correct. That's great. I get it, okay? Don't feel bad, Mark. I was with you. Thank you, Sal the Shoemaker, finally. So Hulu's new rate, 50% higher. Yeah. That is our official
we were
correction and
thinking
apology.
that if it had been another $7 or another $8, it would have been half as, take half of it and add half, that would have been 50% higher. That was our which really would have been 100% increase.
Yeah.
We were wrong. We got it wrong.
Right. So Teacher Lori, accept our correction and apology.
Correction and apology.
Right on. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Meantime, life cranks on. I do want to mention that the Peacefully Resist shirts. This is one of the T-shirts. Can you see Peacefully Resist?
Nice.
It's really great. This is in our new merch line. It's at getmarkmerch.com. You can get a Peacefully Resist shirt, and there are a lot of other shirts like it, sort of with different kinds of configurations. Born to Peacefully Resist is another. And there are mugs. I'm drinking the Coachella Valley coffee from one of these mugs. You can see the Peacefully Resist mug, which is really cool. I just like the font. I like the design. It was designed by Courtney. And then our logo tastefully appears on the backside. Yeah, Albert has it up now. Thank you, Albert. That's the, So if you want to grab one, getmarkmerch.com. The mugs they have the dark mugs are really cool. The white mugs are really cool. Peacefully Resist. And the other one is Born to Peacefully Resist. And then there are T-shirts in the same kind of style. You can see the different logo too. So there's a bunch of stuff to knock around and see on our merch site, getmarkmerch.com. I think you might have fun with it. I think you might want to add it to your collection. And I would say that beyond these, there's just our regular merch stuff. Like there's all this fun stuff. There are aprons and, like barbecue aprons and all this different stuff. So anyway, to the extent you want to support the show and do it in a creative way, these are great opportunities to do it. You get it at getmarkmerch.com. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, I have a lot to get to today. And as I mentioned, we've got a guest at the bottom of the hour. So I want to first get into something that's pretty disturbing. I mean, and I shouldn't even say pretty disturbing. I'm profoundly disturbed by this. And I'll share the story with you along with some other stories that you will find interesting. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care.
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
This is one of those stories that I am sickened by. The DACA recipient, only 39 years old, died in ICE custody at a facility in Adelanto. He was approved for DACA protection in 2012. He wanted to renew that DACA protection. That protection was denied in 2016. And about 2 weeks after arriving at the Immigration Detention Center, he complained that he felt sick. His name is Ismael Ayala Uribe. And at first, he said he had a cough, then a fever. And by Thursday, some days later, he was shaking and complaining of pain. And a staff member flagged his condition as potentially life-threatening, according to internal emails. He was rushed to a detention medical center in a wheelchair, ultimately. But an hour and a half later, medical staffers cleared him to go back to the facility, the detention facility. He was not taken to a hospital, and he was scheduled for surgery for an abscess on his buttock. Ultimately, 3 days later, he was complaining of pain on his buttock.
Mm-hmm.
But by 2:32 in the morning, he was dead. This is something that spotlights a concern with these facilities. These immigration detention centers across the nation are, again, they're basically giant dorms. They set them up, as you know, with oftentimes, as is reported, these despicable conditions and with minimal to no medical care. This guy came to the United States when he was 4 years old. He'd been protected from deportation because of DACA, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrivals Program. And his renewal application was denied. It was nearly a decade ago that he was convicted of a DUI. And that's the reason that his conviction led to him not getting approval for renewal. In any case, the unsafe, unsanitary way in which these people have to live inside these detention facilities is now being exposed. And it's a terrible, terrible fact that we've so othered these people. This administration, in my judgment, has just created a sense of an othering such that we don't focus on many of these people who are such sweet souls, who have been here for long periods of time and been productive members of society and American culture, that this stuff doesn't even make most people's radar. There's a lot to this story, and a lot is wrapped up in this story that's wrong with our system of immigration and detention. And again, this facility, which is run by a for-profit corrections firm called the Geo Group, they run a bunch of them. They were unprepared to handle this number of detainees. They had a shortage of experienced staffers. This has now been documented. And many staffers are saying that they didn't want to complain and they have limited experience, but they could lose their job if they said anything. In the case of Ayala Uribe, that might have been a factor. This is the 14th person to die in federal immigration custody since January. 11 died in custody in 2024, 7 in 2023, 3 in 2022. And again, it was the COVID pandemic that led to the death of many of these people early on in 2020, 2021. Now there's really no excuse, except for the fact that it's pack 'em in, It's build these facilities, pack more in, because we're a for-profit prison corporation. And so another
That's awful.
man dies at age 39 in a situation that was treatable. I mean, he had a condition that was completely treatable. Meantime, we'll talk to both Sarah Kendzior and David Katz about the fact that U.S. prosecutors are likely going to seek an indictment of former FBI Director James Comey in Virginia is where they'll seek it. And by the way, that's because they're trying to avoid Washington, D.C. courts, I believe. We'll talk to David more about this. But if you're wondering why Virginia, it's right across the bridge, from Washington. Prosecutors are expected to ask a grand jury to indict former FBI Director James Comey in the Eastern District of Virginia in the coming days. The exact charges remain unclear.
Doesn't matter what the charges are.
No, just get him.
He's just being, whatever the charges are, it's just because he went against Trump, right? Just because he's a Trump enemy. That's all. That's all he did.
Exactly right. And I would say that when it comes to the law in this case, you have a prosecutor who pushed away from the case, said there's nothing here. There's nothing here with Adam Schiff. There's nothing here with Letitia James. There is just no evidence, Mr. President. There is nothing I can do.
That's unacceptable. You're all fired. Bring in the next guy who will do what I want.
Exactly. The Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert resigned under Trump pressure. And Trump called for him to be removed because he couldn't bring these charges. And when, again, we talk about these charges, like what charges can you find me? Find me some charges against these people. And so they've replaced Eric Siebert with this insurance attorney. She's never even prosecuted a case, but she's there to do one thing, and she understands she's there to do one thing. She was literally there, I think, a day, and she had to figure out a way to begin a process of prosecution against James Comey. Lindsay Halligan is her name. And so even as she's getting memoranda that say, hey, there's no evidentiary cause here for us to put a case together, they are pursuing it. And we'll talk to David Katz about it later in the show. Amazon is going to pay $2.5 billion to settle the lawsuit brought from the FTC. It was brought because apparently it is very difficult to back out of the Prime subscription that many of you have. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, saying that the company enrolled millions of customers without their consent and made it difficult to cancel. And Kim was noting yesterday that it takes like 10 clicks just to get even close to cancellation. Isn't that right?
It was 8 pages and at least 15 clicks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they make it nearly impossible to get rid of it.
So they're agreeing to pay $2.5 billion in fines and to redress to Prime subscribers some monies. This is all to settle this lawsuit by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. And again, I'll point to this just as something of an example of what government regulation and government advocacy on the part of the people can look like, right? This is how it works. But there is less and less regulation and there's less and less advocacy on the part of the people each hour as this administration undoes all of that. The administration is being pushed, that is to say the DOJ, to investigate George Soros's foundation. Again, this is all of a kind. We'll talk more about that with David Katz. This is a directive from the Justice Department attorneys to draft plans to investigate a group funded by George Soros. He's, of course, the billionaire Democratic donor. And President Trump has demanded that he be thrown in jail. Again, don't bother me with details. Just throw him in jail.
Find me a reason.
The statue of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump holding hands. It was in the National Mall. And by the way, it was legally there in the National Mall. They got a permit for this statue. It has now been taken down. Now, the permit actually was for this statue to remain there through Sunday. But I guess because of an irritation to the current administration, it was taken down early. The artwork entitled Best Friends Forever installed near the Capitol Tuesday morning. It became a tourist attraction almost immediately. It shows them holding hands and skipping, both the Donald Trump and disgraced financier and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The plaque said, in honor of Friendship Month, we celebrate the longstanding bond between President Donald J. Trump and his closest friend, Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. It's sweet when these sorts of things are memorialized, but sadly, it didn't last long. And
now the Department of Interior says, wait a minute, the permit didn't say you were going to do that.
Yeah, and the permit didn't say that. It was very cleverly put, apparently. Mm-hmm. But, and so the statue goes away. That, my friends, is law and disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I guess Jimmy Kimmel did some major numbers.
Yeah, he did.
That was fairly predictable. Jimmy even did a joke about it, of course. But it's quite impressive when you consider that the Nexstar and Sinclair stations that still aren't airing his show. This is an interesting thing. I can get into it more in conversations that we can have in the next day or so. But the interesting part is, first of all, huge ratings, of course, for Jimmy and for his return. There was a
normal night, he gets about 1.8 million viewers. Like, that's just a normal, how many people tune in. And the night he came back, there were 6.3 million people watching ABC, but ABC says more than 26 million people watched the return on social media. So those are some big numbers.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, on YouTube alone, 15 million people watched. So, yeah, that 26 million doesn't surprise me. And again, I mentioned Nexstar and Sinclair having blacked out Jimmy's show. It's one of those things where you go, yeah, his numbers would have even been higher. The one thing I will say about this, and then we'll pick up on this another time, but you can't just, as an affiliate, just decide not to run a bunch of network programming over and over again. There are penalties associated with it. You have certain contractual obligations. And so they can do this for a little while, but if Disney wants to lean in, there are actually penalties associated with it. And they can even offer Jimmy Kimmel's show to other affiliates in the market. And so it can be, you'll both be financially penalized, and the programming will still run on another station in the market. Mm-hmm. So at some point, it seems as though Sinclair and Nexstar have a lot of leverage because they do. They control so much. We've talked about this not in the context of Jimmy Kimmel, but just in the context of, right-wing dominance of media. But the reality here is you can't just start blacking out a bunch of shows. This happened with the Smothers Brothers in the 60s, and I want to say some Norman Lear shows might have suffered the same fate in the 70s. So it's not the first time affiliates have pushed back, but it's a really dangerous move to push back for any extended length of time. And of course, Jimmy Kimmel shows on 5 nights a week. So that's a little bit of that. I'm just so happy that he's on, and I just thought it was a tour de force. His return was quite brilliant. So anyway, congratulations to Jimmy Kimmel and that whole crew. And as Jimmy noted, a lot of people depend on that show. The people who work on the show, it's a huge production. The restaurants, the businesses that are in Hollywood and in Southern California that all kind of connect to that show and interact with that show. So in other words, it's an economic engine on some level for a lot of people. And to all of a sudden pull the plug, it's a big deal. And not to mention just the authoritarian nature of the demand to start pulling the plug on all of these shows that in any way arouse the ire of the leader. I mean, it's just outrageous. And then leveraging the government against those companies such that they have to pull the plug. They did it with Colbert and then the shakedown with ABC. I mean, it really is, it's the stuff of despotism. So anyway, that's to be continued. Smash the like button if you would on YouTube.
With your iron rod.
It helps us in the world of YouTube if you give us a thumbs up. we're served into more feeds if we reach some threshold of a thumbs up. I know it's crazy, but that's the way it works. So yeah,
with your iron rod.
yeah, smash it with your iron rod, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. For me, it's like Christmas morning, knowing that Sarah Kendzior is going to be on. I think she's just a wonderful mind, brilliant writer. You should pick up her books. You should subscribe to her Substack, as we do. And we'll actually have links to both under this video. But The View from Flyover Country, Hiding in Plain Sight, They Knew. These are brilliant books, as is The Last American Road Trip. I just, boy, and the title is chilling, given what's happening with the country. So please welcome best-selling author and journalist Sarah Kendzior. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too. Thanks for having me back.
This is so fun for me to be able to talk to you. You know, I'm such a fan, and I feel like we're at this moment. I feel even as I say we're at this moment, every month I could speak about the moment and say I feel we're at this moment. Things have become so unspooled. We've seen all the worst impulses of this president indulged not only by his party, which I think I'd argue has been completely transformed. So it's essentially a MAGA party, and his government has really been cowed and bows to his wishes. Give me a state of the state, and then I want to get into some of the Comey stuff and some of the other things that are happening specifically.
I mean, the Republican Party has been a MAGA party since about 2017, 2018, especially when they took control of the Supreme Court. In the beginning, there was some pushback. People who are now his biggest cheerleaders, like Lindsey Graham, were working against him, but that went away very quickly. He used the same tactics that he used his whole life of blackmail, threats of physical violence, bribery, threats of excessive litigation, and they've been in line for a long time. They broke briefly after January 6th, but I think when they saw that the Biden DOJ was not going to bring any consequences, not only for January 6th, but for the rest of the crimes that Trump committed while in office, they felt empowered by that. And now they're in this position where, a lot of Republicans from previous administrations have long left. People like Paul Ryan retired early, got out while they could. And it became more extreme in itself. It attracted extremists because it's people who know they can get away with anything because Trump will let them as long as they are loyal to him. That's the only quality that he demands.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to see this billionaires boys club of cabinet officials around him and these appointees. You know, you've got people have never been handled a negotiation or know nothing about diplomacy. And is it Whitlock who's handling everything from Middle East to Ukraine? I mean, this is a golfing buddy of Donald Trump's who just happens to be a rich real estate entrepreneur, and we've put him in charge of these highly sensitive matters. It's as though they're playing government on some level. And Sarah, I could almost handle the baked-in corruption that I know I get with Donald Trump, the idea that he's all going to be about self-enrichment. Were there any level of competence about anything else going on in government? And there just really isn't.
Oh, I think they're very competent. It just, you have to ask, what are they competent at?
Okay.
What is their goal? They're incredibly competent at crime, kleptocracy, shakedowns, self-enrichment, stripping the country and selling it for parts. That's what they've been doing, and that's been their explicit goal since 2016. This is something Trump talked about openly himself in interviews at that time. It's, Bannon was back in the fold then, and he said the goal was the deconstruction of the administrative state. Project 2025 laid it out as a policy, platform plan. In the 2024 election, there was a lot of opportunity to prepare for this moment. And, what he did this time is the same as what he did, or really it's his backers. I'm not sure he makes these decisions, as the first term where they cast people. I don't even think they hire, they cast, just like on reality TV, to lead the departments that they want to dismantle. So, if it's the Department of Education, you get someone who's against public education. If it's the Department of the Interior, you get someone who is against, national parks or preserving, our lands, and so on and so forth. The problem now is that this is the second run. They understand the system in and out. They've gotten state secrets and all sorts of information about the bureaucratic mechanisms of government that they didn't originally have in the first term. They got it then. They've had a long time to shift the political culture of the US, either hard to the right or just to the point of mass disillusionment, merited disillusionment, in my opinion. And that makes it easier for them to get away with all of these kleptocratic goals.
I want to get to a couple of things related to some of what you've talked about, but I want to kind of stay with the corruption for a second, because we saw on display two things, I think, at minimum, with the revelations about Tom Homan taking $50,000 in that bag, getting literally a bag of cash prior to the Trump administration taking office. There was the implicit promise, it might have been an explicit promise, I don't know, but it was an FBI sting that suggested that for this cash, contractors, again, they were FBI agents, but they were posing as potential contractors, would be awarded contracts under the new policies instituted by the Trump administration and handled by Tom Homan. So he takes $50K in cash in this bag, and the Justice Department looks the other way on it, says there's just no there, nothing to investigate.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the Justice Department has been behaving consistently for the last 10 or more years. I don't think that this is unique to Trump. It's just the manner in which it's expressed is different. With Trump, they flaunt it. They're incredibly brazen about it. They're forthright, that the DOJ and the FBI is an apparatus of Trump and his network. It's not meant to represent the interests of the United States. It's not meant to serve the public good. Under Biden, we had this kind of pretense of, it's this plodding, slow mechanism that needs to be so carefully managed that it can accomplish absolutely nothing during the entire, 4 years that Biden and the Democrats were in power in terms of holding criminal elites accountable. And so, they kind of played an opposite song, but you end up with a similar result. And in the first term of Trump, it was kind of a mixed bag, because you had the Mueller probe, which at least kind of spoke to the criminality that was happening, but of course brought no real results in terms of containing the criminality. And, I don't really care whether anybody is punished, whether they go to prison, that's not my interest. It's, can they harm the American people? Can they harm, our freedom, our Constitution, our basic rights? Are they in a position to take them away? And the answer is yes, they were left in the position to do that. And that is why it's so dangerous. It's not about punitive measures or revenge or anything like that. It's about protecting innocent people from harm.
You write so beautifully about this. You write in
I think you cut out there.
The elite, created by the elite, and there to what happened there? Are we okay? What happened to
maybe
you dropped for a couple seconds there?
Okay, yeah. You write, Sarah. You write about this. You write bluntly about these institutions created by the elite that then end up protecting the elite, and that's why Democrats and Republicans both. The Merrick Garland slow walk on everything when it came to holding Trump to account. And so I think it's interesting that you reference it in this case. And you're right. This just seems as though it's being done without any sleight of hand,
Yeah, I mean, they're very brazen. They also have had a propaganda apparatus in place for a long time to tell us different tales about the FBI. The FBI has done that since the days of Hoover, where Hoover would say, "Oh, the mafia doesn't exist, so I can't possibly prosecute it." The Biden variant was basically the crappiest version ever of Poncho and Lefty. Where it's just like, we're just gonna let them go. They're just some of our old folks, our old gang. We'll get them eventually. I don't know. I mean, I think I wrote an article called Servants of the Mafia State, where I laid out why Garland did what he did, I think it's mostly because he was mentored by Jamie Gorelick, who is, associated with a number of disasters of the 21st century, but most notably was Jared Kushner's quote unquote ethics lawyer. And that's who got Merrick Garland into a position as an AG under Clinton. And then, that was obviously a disastrous thing to have happen under Biden. Biden was fully aware of that. But yeah, now with Kash Patel, in the Trump administration, it's a very forthright program of vengeance and vendettas and going after people, at the whim, in a sort of show trial way. I have mixed feelings about this because I often feel like they're targeting people who have in fact committed crimes, but they're not targeting them for those crimes. The biggest crime that they think could possibly happen is, you have insulted the greatness of Donald Trump and, you must be therefore punished. It doesn't matter if, say, John Bolton committed war crimes. It doesn't matter if, Comey had multiple ethics breaches and, did a lot of stuff that quite honestly helped Donald Trump, and not just releasing, the warning about Hillary Clinton right before the election that turned out to be nothing, but doing things like taking the head of the Russian mafia off of the FBI's top 10 most wanted list right around the time of the election and replacing him with a bank robber. That was very beneficial to Trump because Trump had a tie to that individual, to Semyon Mogilevich. So, going after Comey, I'm not sure they're actually going to do anything to any of these guys. I think it's kind of, throwing chum in the water or whatnot, giving their base what they want. I do wish that people were held accountable for the crimes that they actually committed, instead of being, persecuted for things that they didn't do or for sort of dictator-like moves on Trump's part. But unfortunately, that is the government we have at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Comey stuff and all the rest. And these kind of feel like brushback pitches, or just as you say, it's a way to mollify the base or show the base that there's stuff going on. But there are real people involved. I'm not talking about the Comeys of the world. I'm talking about the Justice Department people. I'm talking about well-meaning prosecutors. They go there. They don't really make the money that they might make in the private sector, and they go there as public servants. I grew up in Washington D.C., so I know a lot of people who work at Justice, and they're disgusted. They're leaving. But they're leaving in this downcast way. I mean, these are people, and it works the other way too. And this is why it's so easy to leverage, as Trump has, like, you do this or I will fire you. These are people with families, with kids who are in preschool, but they have, real lives. And so I feel like there's a lot of screwing with people that this administration does that out in the open that I find it just loathsome on a human level.
Yeah, exactly. And, this is another area where I have mixed feelings because on one hand, I feel like the FBI obviously did not do their job, or Trump shouldn't have been eligible to run in 2016 because he had spent his life as a career criminal associate. He had all sorts of ties, all sorts of illicit foreign dealings that would make, a normal candidate ineligible for office. And he should have been held accountable long ago. And the fact that he wasn't, that he was, playing a celebrity game show host for a decade, gave Americans a feeling of safety that was really unmerited. And it made it seem like the Democrats or other people were lying about the dangers of Trump because they would think, well, if he was really that serious a threat, the FBI would have done something about him long ago, and they didn't. So clearly this is a witch hunt. They would believe Trump on that. And while they were incorrect, I understand the logic of it. At the same time, during Trump's first term, he also went in a very personal way after individual FBI members, notably those who had been studying transnational organized crime, in particular the Russian mafia, and in particular a lot of people who Trump had illicit business relations. And so when he would target someone like, Lisa Page or so forth, like that was the impetus of that. It was to gut that agency of anyone who might be left actually trying to operate in good faith and crack down transnational organized crime. Later, I think they made a move to try to get rid of people who were cracking down on militias, on white supremacist groups, on all these other groups that are threats to the U.S. I'm very critical of the FBI. I'm frustrated deeply with the FBI, especially how it behaved under Biden, because that was a time where they really should have cleaned house. They really should have reorganized and tried to take these problems seriously. They did not. But at the same time, we have terrorist threats, mostly domestic terrorist threats. We've seen multiple shootings, a rise in political violence. If there's going to be an agency that handles that, I guess at this point it is the FBI. There are numerous government agencies that I think need either to be gutted or just we're kind of beyond the problem of reform. I put ICE and DHS in that category as well. But at the same time, yeah, of course, there's no excuse for a personal vendetta against a bureaucratic employee simply because that employee is doing their job by looking into state corruption and crime.
Yeah, I mean, it takes people to do things like look into the rise of white nationalism and into the Proud Boys and into the Three Percenters, et cetera. These are, of course, now in a reimagined agency. In this case, it's a dark nightmare of a reimagination because you have the deletion, essentially, of white nationalism as an issue in America. So when you look at growing violence in America, gun violence, et cetera, you don't even look at this hotbed of horror when it comes to these things. It's completely overlooked. I mean, I love the idea of reimagining, but the reimagination that's going on through Project 2025 is nightmarish, particularly when it comes to the environment. And it was on full display when you saw the impulses of Donald Trump, which are associated with like some kind of 1950s view of the world, on display at the UN, where it's, I don't know why you guys are doing this green energy thing. I mean, listening to Donald Trump, it was as though green energy and alternative energy were the greatest threats to the globe, when the reality is that they may save or at least extend the life of the globe.
Yeah, I mean, that speech, I honestly didn't watch the speech. I sort of just saw the highlights where it was like, we don't like biowarfare. Okay, good. We're also against saving the planet, bad. I mean, what he says in these speeches, I don't think has as much relevance as what his network, both his criminal network and his, bureaucratic network, are actually doing in terms of policy. A lot of this is just sort of his blather, and this extends, of course, to his social media posts, where you get a lot of strange things. Like recently, he's now completely switched his position on Ukraine in a post that was very obviously not written by him. And so I think there's just a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and folks who are kind of shocked at the loss of decorum or whatever when Trump comes to go present at the UN. I'm just sort of like, were y'all in a coma like the last 10 years? I mean, this is obviously what you're going to get. And it really does remind me of the end of the Soviet Union. It reminds me of all those geriatric leaders they had right before Gorbachev, kind of one after another. That's a very bad sign for us, that we're emulating this path. I do not want this country to collapse. And I certainly do not think people deserve to live under this endless stream of half coherent, very corrupt individuals leading this country.
You mentioned social media. I just wanted to, I thought of you when they gave TikTok, and I think it becomes official today, to Larry Ellison. And I thought of you again, sort of see our earlier remarks about the elite taking care of the elite. It is now a huge entity that is handed to Larry Ellison, who's very much of the Trump mind or right-wing mind. And his company also looking to acquire a large chunk of Warner Brothers and Discovery, and this will be a massive footprint from a media standpoint. And that kind of control over information and messaging, Sarah, it really takes us into a place that I feel as though that groundwork was laid in the 90s or even prior to that. And now we're sort of sadly going to be exposed to it in a big way.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest turning points that we faced in this administration. A lot of it was kind of a repeat of the first administration, just accelerated and worse. There was not as much of a crackdown on free speech and free media during that first administration because the infrastructure behind it was much more robust and allowed for a lot more criticism of the government. And there are many ways you can stop criticism of the government. It doesn't have to be something dramatic like a repeal of the First Amendment. You can simply shadow ban people, so they're technically there, but no one can hear them. You can elevate other people through algorithms. You can selectively kick different people off. You can stop certain topics from trending. And so these oligarchs who run these social media networks, or for that matter, who have now taken over traditional print media like Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post, they hold an enormous amount of power. There was always a gatekeeper aspect to media that would keep stories out. You saw this with Iran Contra and basically anything that followed Watergate. With Watergate, they kind of learned their lesson and they're like, let's make sure that never happens again and never give power, back to the people, back to the journalists. But then there was social media, there was the internet, there were bloggers, there was an ability for people to break through and be able to tell the story. That ability is decreasing rapidly. I'm also worried about Substack and the other newsletter platforms that have been where a lot of these laid off journalists have gone. That seems like a natural next target after, now that they do have TikTok. I also think a lot of the motivation to get TikTok is because TikTok is where a lot of young folks in particular have learned about the genocide in Gaza. And this administration is extremely committed to suppressing information about that, especially, heard directly from Palestinians on the ground.
Yeah, boy, that's a great point as well. We're on the verge of a government shutdown. And the latest reporting is associated with a memo that went out to agencies saying, prepare for mass layoffs, not furloughs, but these will be layoffs. So the gutting of government has only really begun. This will be at least the potential for, if this shutdown happens, a real trimming of government on a level that Project 2025 is dreaming about. And it came, this memo, from OMB, which, as you know, is this incredibly powerful agency that really got very little focus before Russel Vought took over and became this author of Project 2025. And so he's running OMB that just sent this memo out saying, guys, we're not furloughing people. We're getting rid of people when this government shutdown actually happens.
Yeah, this is a very frightening prospect. I remember being afraid when they did this in, I think it was 2018 through 2019. There was a government shutdown under Trump. There was also one in 2013, and that was the first one in my life where I really wondered, is the government going to come back? Because it seemed that it was in the Republican self-interest to not bring these institutions back, to not provide basic goods and services to the public, to not fulfill taxpayer demands. They've wanted a pretext to do this for a long time. And so there's an enormous risk in giving in to a shutdown because things like, national parks, state parks, healthcare, public schools that we need, they have decided that they are unnecessary, that we are undeserving of them. And I think that they would be content, to just eliminate them entirely by letting a shutdown kind of go on forever. It's like when a television show announces hiatus and you kind of, you know what that really means. I think that's kind of the template that Trump sees, government functions and foundations is, it's actually cancellation in his mind.
I think Mark connection dropped. So Kim, can you just tag in real quick?
Hi, yeah. We'll set Mark back up. Boy, we have a lot of activity in the chat. Oh, here's Mark.
Only
Hello,
on
welcome.
the day, yeah.
Welcome
Of course,
back.
it would happen on the day Sarah's here. I'm so elated to be talking to her, and I get knocked off.
Getting
Sorry.
hacked.
Yeah, exactly.
We're
Thank
getting
you. It's the hack.
activated.
Right. I want a full
announced it in
investigation.
advance. That was a mistake.
I got
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Thank you. No, but I love what you were just saying because it did happen in 2013, and there were shutdowns in all of these critical areas. When I say critical areas, I even mean national parks and some of the things that you've talked about that one doesn't even factor into perhaps being affected by a shutdown. So please, I thought you were making a very, really good point. I'm sorry that my connection was lost for an instant,
okay.
but so the dynamics of this really play into a crew that really doesn't value government. So if you don't value government, this shutdown really plays right into your strategy.
Yeah, I mean, they value government as a tool to harass citizens, to surveil us, to spy on us, to create bureaucratic rules that curtail our freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and other constitutional rights. But in terms of providing services, whether basic services like, the post office and the ability to mail things, including internationally, or, the ability to have a funded public school system, or, as you said, national parks. And I am very worried about this because in the last shutdown, a lot of those parks faced a great deal of damage, some of it permanent. There was trees that were being pulled down that had taken hundreds and sometimes thousands of years to grow. These
There was
things are just
widespread vandalism. That's right.
Yeah, they don't repair themselves, and the parks are already in danger because of defunding, understaffing, and so forth. And so they want to keep going with this. It's incredibly unpopular. We've seen this in polls that Trump is, I think, at his all-time low. This is just going to increase this, and they know that. And it concerns me that they know that because it's a sign that they do not believe there's going to be a free and fair election in the midterms. They think that all of this is not going to affect them. It doesn't matter how the public feels about it because they're just going to proceed in doing what they want. They don't see any obligation of even pretending to serve the public. That's the key difference. They would at least put up a pretense before, it was not sincere, but they felt a kind of obligation to make it seem like this was, government is normal. They're not bothering with that now.
I want to ask you about something that relates to the soul of America or the values of America, or as they.
Oh, here we are again.
Oh no.
Oh no. What a bummer, because it's your maiden voyage on your Mark Thompson show, kind of, not that you haven't been on the show before, but your Mark Thompson show debut. And I have to tell you, we're so excited to have you on.
It's okay.
And so as Mark reconnects again, can we talk about a little bit about what's happening at the White House today, which is the leader of Turkey is coming to the White House. Oh, hi, Mark.
No,
welcome
finish
back.
that question. It's a good question. Yeah. One dictator meets another, right?
One dictator meets another, and the White House, apparently the United States, is considering lifting the ban on F-35 sales. We have internationally with Russia, we have the United States military scrambling fighter jets as Russia comes into our airspace. We have these drone incursions over Poland and other countries in Europe. And it feels like militarily things are heating up. Is there anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, is it Erdogan that's coming? Is that
right?
What
Exactly.
that's right.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that, but Turkey is a extremely seminal country at this moment, both in terms of the war with Ukraine and the action of NATO and Russia, and what's going to happen with that in the future, but also in terms of Israel and U.S. support for Israel, and the fact that Israel recently was threatening Turkey and did so after they attacked Qatar, they attacked Yemen, they attacked Lebanon, they continue to attack Gaza, and Turkey is really in the middle of all of this, in this very pivotal geostrategic spot. And in terms of Erdogan, he's going to look out for what's best for himself. He makes me so sad because I used to live in Turkey. I lived in Turkey from 2003 through 2004, so 21 years ago, and he was the new president. And all these young folks, I taught high school, I taught English, they were so excited about him. They really thought this was kind of a new era of freedom and democracy democracy, and not in any of our wildest dreams did we think that he would be there 2 decades later as this extreme oppressor, which really began in earnest, I think, around 2013 with a lot of the crackdowns on free speech and free assembly. And so, they're two of a kind in a way, in that they share these typical qualities of a dictatorship. But I think Erdogan is looking out for Erdogan. He's looking out for Turkey. And I don't think that he's likely to be like bamboozled by Trump or something like that. But I'm not quite clear, what kind of arrangement they're going to make, because there's so many different issues that they're kind of locked in the center of.
And Turkey was always thought of as this sort of this triumph of secularism surrounded by a strong Muslim population. I mean, a robust Islamic surrounding, but the government was secular. It was always sort of thought of as a shining light that way. And you're right, it's become, sadly, just in the control of this guy who sort of has the playbook along the same way that Orban does, for a sort of a soft takeover, such that, the public, before they know it, are dealing with an authoritarian.
Yeah, and that soft takeover was in 2016. You had all these things happening at once. You had that, you had Brexit, you had Orban consolidating power. It's really frightening how coordinated it was, and how you saw a lot of the same operatives in the background, working in different spaces. But Turkey is such an example of a place where everyone needs to remember this, especially about the U.S., where the people and the culture are very different from the government. I loved living in Turkey. I would love to be able to go back there. And it's just such a shame, what's happened to such a beautiful place when it's held under this kind of repressive constraint.
Well, there we go. What I was going to say, as well as it's clearly Mark having connection problems, is all of these things are happening, but then you have someone like Trump in charge of it. And it's just making me more and more nervous, because I just don't trust what his response to all of this will be. I don't think
trust Trump with it.
No, imagine that.
Jail with you.
But I don't trust that. I guess his last presidency, we kind of saw this, our place on the world stage fall apart. And to have someone who's not able to really handle an American response to, dangers against democracy, against American ideals, and against potentially things that could trigger some type of, third world war type of thing. It's just the more we go on, the scarier it gets.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I'm afraid it's the combination of everything. All of these different dictatorships, all of this instability, the fact that their goal, the idea of leverage changed. A traditional kind of dictatorship, you used to at least want to expand the country, strengthen the country. That's actually the model that somebody like Erdogan or Putin are operating on. With Trump, it's really to collapse the country and then be able to sell off the remains. And so there's no sort of leverage in terms of our self-preservation in that equation. That is a mafia state rule. And so we're in more danger than we would be if they were following that 20th century kind of typical model. And I think also the role of digital media and all these tech tycoons lurking in the background, who have these transnational ties, who have these ideas of, world digital currency, who use AI to replace human beings, who don't have any regard for the sanctity of human life. Those are the people whose decisions, I think, are dominating the culture of this administration more than Trump himself. Trump is still the front man. He's not the ideologue, but it's extremely frightening to have so many people with such kind of hatred for what makes us human, pulling the strings in the background.
Well, we're almost out of time with you for this week, and I'm so excited that I get to have you back is it every week are we doing? I don't know.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Okay, but now that we got rid of that Mark Thompson guy, there
Yeah.
was a story a couple of days ago that the Pentagon is disbanding this committee for the increase of having women in the military after 75 years. And yesterday I saw the story that RFK Jr. is now launching an FDA review of the abortion pill, mifepristone, and which is used in about 2/3 of abortions nationwide. And it feels rather like an attack on women. Not that I should be surprised about that, because it happened last time, right? You have this rhetoric with women are supposed to stay home and obey and do all of these things. But now with the, it's so blatant with this disbanding of this 75-year-old committee to include women in the military and this clampdown on the availability of abortion drugs, possibly. I just wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ever since the repeal of Roe, we've been going down this path. So I don't see it as unique to the Trump administration. As someone I live in Missouri, and one day I woke up and I had fewer rights than my husband, fewer rights than my son. And that's a really horrible feeling to have, to just have your bodily autonomy stripped away from you. And, almost all the states where this happened fought back. We did on a ballot initiative. We got our reproductive rights at least temporarily restored. The same thing happened in Kansas and other states. This is not a popular position, and taking away birth control is even less popular. And it's really not that controversial. There's all these stereotypes about quote unquote red states. Red states welcome birth control. And so, this is really just a matter of power. They'll try to frame it as a matter of health or sexuality or whatever, but it's just a way of asserting that, if you are a woman, you have less power than a man, and that is the natural order of things, and that is the way that it's going to be for you. Women here are innovative. They figure out ways around this, but it's just a shame. And one of the things that shocked me most was how few people kind of had empathy or stood up for us when we were in this position. Missouri was the first state where this happened. It had a trigger law, so it automatically happened with the Supreme Court repeal. And we just got kind of like, well, too bad for you, from the Democratic Party. We just kept getting hit with like fundraisers from Nancy Pelosi. I'm like, this is not going to help get our rights. And you're also not showing any respect for the true fear that we have when there are things like, bounty hunter laws announced in places like Texas. It's genuinely a frightening situation. And I don't think that they really address that with the proper respect that it deserves.
Yeah, you write about that in your last American road trip, as I recall.
Yes.
And the stripping away of, Kim is so right. I mean, you see it so on display in a brazen way with Hegseth in the military. There's just this, this troglodyte kind of attitude toward everything when this military machine that had all these issues. Of course, so the problem with sexual assault in the military is an absolute epidemic. It's a horror show. But you see, putting that aside, that the military was trying, it seemed, on some level, at least through, I think, a democratic flex of sorts, to get women in higher positions in the military and to at least try to be responsive to women's needs or women's voices. And maybe it was performative. Please don't misunderstand me. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is not even the artifice of that anymore. It is all gone. And it is really a war on women from this administration. And it's really scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that it was performative to a large extent. I think we saw quite a lot of that, around 2019, 2020, a lot of institutions pretending to care about civil rights, pretending to care about women's rights, and then abandoning it when, they thought it was convenient. They treated it like a trend. That said, this is another example, like when I said Trump casts his administration, he doesn't hire. That's what he did with Hegseth. This is not someone who's qualified to lead, this institution, but he is. With Mattis back in the first administration, I always thought he got in purely because he was nicknamed Mad Dog, and Trump thought that was cool. And so,
I agree.
we accidentally got a qualified person. I didn't like him. I want to be clear about that, but he was qualified. He had the experience. He had the understanding. We don't have that now. And of course we have, despite Trump's claims that he's, solved, I think he said he solved 7 wars or ended 7 wars. We are engaged by association or through funding in quite a lot of military incursions around the world, most notably funding Israel's genocide. And these are not the folks who I want doing that, in addition to their crackdown on, against women, against, gay and lesbian and trans people, all of that within the military. They also are obsessed with the apocalypse. They're obsessed with the rapture, and they see a lot of these wars, particularly in the Middle East, as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. They either sincerely see it this way, or they see how it's very useful to try to see it that way and portray that kind of image, because then they can get people to accept wars or invasions that they normally would protest, because they think it's all headed towards some sort of glorious ending, which it really is not. It is kind of making me reevaluate my belief in the Antichrist, but that's its own thing. So yeah, we're in a lot of trouble with these folks, no matter what. I guess we can all agree on that, whether it's heading towards the rapture or just towards a bureaucratic collapse. Who knows? But
I'm now way over time, but I did want to get this in if this connection holds, because the Charlie Kirk thing was really obviously a huge thing, culturally, politically, and one of the things that's been birthed by the Charlie Kirk violence and the murder of Charlie Kirk is this declaration in Oklahoma. The Oklahoma school head, I had it here before, he wants to force schools in Oklahoma to create Turning Point USA chapters in all of the high schools in Oklahoma. I mean, it's and of course, he's casting it. I was watching something with him this morning. He's casting it as, this is to push back against the leftist ideology that is built into all of the curricula at the high school level.
Yeah, I think this is a really bizarre turn, and this is in part because I've spent a lot of time in Oklahoma. If you go to Oklahoma, everything's named after Will Rogers. Like everywhere you go, everything is Will Rogers, and Will Rogers was, a very popular entertainer from about 100 years ago, who also died very suddenly. But he was, a part white, part Cherokee kind of, all over personality, extremely popular and beloved in his time. A lot of younger folks today have no idea who he was. But the idea of that was what struck me in my mind, was like, you're replacing Will Rogers with somebody with no connection to the state, with no connection to the state's indigenous people, which is another thing to remember about Oklahoma, is that this is a state with a very large number of native tribes, and you're forcing Charlie Kirk, into the curriculum in a really inorganic way. I mean, if they just want to create a situation, I guess, in tribute, in which people debate things in schools, or they, try to make a case for their argument, like, I think that would be fine. But it's very weird to glom onto him and kind of exploit his murder in order to have what is really a right-wing takeover of the schools framed as a memorial. I think that is what they're doing.
Yeah, it's just that. Thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. Sorry for the technical screw-ups. Kim, thank you for jumping on. And as usual, Kim can rock this without me to begin with. So very, very cool. And Sarah, I'm told, and this is like the best news, again, like a kid on Christmas morning, that you'll come through again. I don't know what the schedule is, but
I will be back. I
promise. All right. I look forward to that. We have links to all of your stuff. Again, your Substack, we're paying members, and it's worth every penny. And of course, your books are wonderful. I talk about them all the time, even when you're not here. So look forward to the next time. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All the best. Sarah Kendzior, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, we'll have links to all of Sarah's stuff, so you really should get into a book. You can almost needle drop her books. They're that good. The narratives of both high-profile figures, and then just the way that the history of America, and I'm talking about recent history of America, has essentially set the stage for a lot of what we're experiencing right now. It's just all laid bare. So, again, definitely get into it if you haven't. It's weird. I don't know what the technical thing is today, Albert.
What a bummer. That's such a bummer that it would happen with Sarah Kendzior.
Yeah, because I was so excited for her to be...
I blame you.
All right. I don't know that it was anyone's fault, but...
it looks like your connection looks stable now.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. She's not here anymore. So, yeah, now it's terrific. Sarah is truly...
Great job, Kim, just getting in there and...
Yeah, Kim crushes. There's no question about it. Yeah.
A lot of love for Sarah in the chat as well. That's really nice.
She's the real thing.
Yeah.
I was looking for the Sal the Shoemaker. Don't we have a Sal the Shoemaker made a comment in the
Sal the Shoemaker. Little Anthony.
Kim, great job, says Sal the Shoemaker.
Oh, thanks, Sal the
Shoemaker. Great job juggling everything today. So
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Yeah, and Little Anthony's not available. He's doing, I think he's doing 7 to 10 right now. So really like Sarah Kendzior, says Jeanette. She's a good speaker and a good writer too. She is a brilliant writer.
The writing, it's like a take your breath away situation. I wish I could write like that. She's amazing.
Yeah. So, I will tell you, I can tell everybody this, Kim is the Sarah whisperer. She interacts with Sarah.
I don't know about that.
So so as Rhonda says, Kim rocks. So
nice.
You'll tell us.
Oh,
when
girl,
Sarah will be
baby,
back.
girl, don't even play.
Yeah. Great interview, says Zero Sum. Yeah, it was a tag team interview today. All right. Katz is upcoming. I'd love to get a... what's that?
John Watson says, I thought Mark was raptured there for a while.
Oh, that would have been...
Yeah.
That would have been a story, man. Would have been a story.
I thought you weren't going up. I thought you were one of the folks staying behind in the rapture.
I kind of wanted to stay behind. I know that that's not a really popular position, but
I think Mark ran out of time to sell all his stuff like those people are doing on TikTok. They're selling up everything.
It's really been a rough go for me. I haven't been able to...
Can you imagine? They're offloading all their worldly possessions.
Yeah.
Come on.
Belva Davis, thank you for mentioning her Big E61. So Belva Davis is a true pioneer. There was a piece in the Chronicle yesterday. She passed away. Maybe you get a picture of her up there, Albert. She was at Cron when I was there. Political reporter. This is back a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away with a guy named Roland Post. The both of them really doing terrific political reporting. And Belva Davis was someone who had carved out this remarkable place for herself and was a pioneer. She was a Bay Area TV news icon.
She was the first African-American woman to be on television news in the Bay Area.
And that's what I mean when I say pioneer. She worked, I believe, I know at KRON. She also...
she was on
KQED, maybe?
KQED for a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
She was really good. She passed away at the age of 92.
She opened doors that had long been closed. Said, I believe the mayor of Oakland said this. Yeah. And she proved through her talent and perseverance that our voices belonged on the airwaves. She made it possible for a new generation of journalists to see themselves in all forms of media and to know they had a place in shaping public conversation.
And I got it wrong. She wasn't the first African-American television journalist in the Bay Area. She was the first on the West Coast.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to imagine a time like that, but, again, it doesn't feel as though it was so long ago. 92 years old, Belva Davis. I loved her. She was just terrific. I mean, I worked with her for years, worked for there at Cron, and she had, she had a cubicle like everybody else had a cubicle, and she was and you'd, just because of the layout of the newsroom, you'd walk past her all the time. Her, Rollin, and you always felt like those were the super smart people in the newsroom. You know who else worked there right across in the cubicle adjacent to mine is Mara Liasson, the NPR reporter. I think she's on Fox News Channel also. Mara Liasson was there. So she was a writer. So it was quite the time. There was still a vibrant news organization that Belva Davis was part of. There was time for her to do her reporting on politics, on California politics, on national politics. And now I feel as though everything's been truncated. Everything's just much shorter and more unforgiving. The newsrooms have all been pared down. There's no money anymore. Now it's all, can we make a TikTok video? But back then there were hours and hours of TV news. It was really populated by serious journalism. There were, literally Peabody winners in that newsroom, and she was one of those award-winning journalists. So a real tribute to her, I'm sure, is being done in the Bay Area. The Chronicle did a big piece on her, San Francisco Chronicle, and again, Belva Davis will be missed, but her legacy is substantial. So, 92 years old.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Who's Mark Thompson?
The Mark Thompson Show.
I know you're wondering, Mark, what is the coffee that you drink? Well, it is, it's right there for you. I don't like to hoard. It's a Coachella Valley coffee.
Delicioso.
And I'm drinking it out of our Peacefully Resist mug, which is quite special, has our logo on the back. You can get the mug at getmarkmerch.com, but you get the coffee at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you use our discount code MARKT at checkout, and you, too, can enjoy the experience that your taste buds and your body will thank you for. It is a magical experience. The Ocotillo Espresso, the Sunrise Blend, the El Gato, those are all blends that I always like. And but the French Roast is magnificent. The dark, full, rich, riquissimo feel. They've got the cold brew, the Ethiopia, and of course, many teas and spices as well that are magnificent. You hear Kim talk about the teas all the time. The ginger mint, the turmeric blend, the mango tea. Yeah. Coachella Valley Sumatra is a favorite of Ricky O'Bear, who's an OG of the show. You, too, can dip your toe into the water.
What?
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Mark T at checkout for 10% off. The Clarity Blend is, I'm over the moon for the Clarity Blend. That's the newest in my kitchen. But there's the steak rub, and as I mentioned, there are some great spices. Coachella Valley, I'm halfway through my large French press, says Rev P. Yeah. It's enjoyed by everyone. And they're a great, great company. Like, they're a small business that you want to support. So definitely give them a look. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A little news, story or two, turbo news, and then David Katz. Yeah. All right. Smash the like button. Thanks again to Sarah Kendzior. And I'm so bummed
with your
that
iron rod.
Technical problems. God. That was like being on a first date with my dream girl and not being able to get the car started. That's exactly what it was like. Yeah, my sister has to come along and go, hey, I've got a car that works. Okay, yeah. All right, I'll just be right here.
I'll drive you guys to the movies.
So often and I'll wave.
Y'all just stay in the back seat. I'll take you. It's okay.
Oh my God. All right, Kim's News and then Katz next.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Mark just talked about it a little bit, but Boy, is it the good stuff. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. NATO's Secretary General is echoing President Trump's call for member countries to shoot down Russian planes that violate their airspace. Secretary General Mark Rutte sharing his stance during an interview. Also, though, suggesting the action should only be taken once all other options have been exhausted. Rutte says there have been Russian incursions into NATO airspaces for decades and noted that the U.S. military has trained and prepared for this. The Secretary General added member countries know how to accurately assess situations to determine the proper course of action. Even that he has to say anything about it, makes me nervous.
No, the whole thing. There. I mean, it would be so easy to back into a war. It really would be. I mean, I think it's oftentimes forgotten how easy it is to back into a military conflict. I mean, look at the origins of World War I, if you want to see how accidentally things can happen. That was a horrible, horrible war. And look how it accidentally happened. So I think these guys have to be, these guys who are playing military and, you know, they're playing house with so much when it comes to government and the military. Everything is performative. And you heard, you know, Sarah Kendzior talk about this. You heard me talk about the fact that Trump cast everybody. Remember, I used to talk about that, how he cast Pete Hegseth, how he cast Jeanine Pirro, how he cast these people. Yeah. It wasn't based on competence. It's based on look. It's based on the way in which they handle media. That's why he took so many from Fox News Channel. And it was, when I heard her say it, I thought, wow. I mean, that I felt almost buoyed by the fact that she sees the same thing.
We move on to TikTok.
I mentioned that only, sorry to interrupt again, but I mentioned that only because you don't have people of competence handling a situation that, again, could easily blow up. So
that's what's so scary. It appears TikTok will keep on running in the United States. President Trump expected to sign a deal later today that'll allow for a sale of the popular social platform after years of threatening to pull it because it's owned by the Chinese. Under this deal, the app U.S. operations will be run by a new U.S.-based company. TikTok's current owner, China's-based ByteDance, will hold under 20% of the stock in this new company. Federal prosecutors will reportedly seek to indict former FBI Director James Comey. The Washington Post reporting the Justice Department will be asking a grand jury to indict Comey, not invite him, indict him on allegations that he lied to Congress on his handling of the investigation into the Russia meddling of the 2016 presidential election. Comey has maintained his innocence, and if a federal grand jury were to approve this case, it would mark one of the highest profile indictments of a political figure. President Trump putting the blame for the deadly ICE shooting this week at a facility in Texas on the shoulders of Democrats. There's a surprise. Trump telling reporters at the White House today, the rhetoric from the left causes bad things to happen. He said the Democratic Party is only energizing the right. One person died, 2 more in critical condition after a shooter opened fire on that ICE facility. Oklahoma's state superintendent who promoted Bibles in schools is stepping down. Ryan Walters received national attention for his push to incorporate teaching the Bible and display the 10 Commandments in classrooms. He also recently said every high school in the state would have a Turning Point chapter, the organization founded by Charlie Kirk. Wednesday, he announced he will become the CEO of the Teacher Freedom Alliance. It's a group that fights teachers' unions.
that fights teacher freedom. That's how it works. Okay, what's it called? Teacher Freedom Alliance. Okay, that means you fight teacher freedom. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what that means. It's opposites day. The Trump administration is pulling $65 million in federal grants, speaking of schools, from New York City, Chicago, and Fairfax, Virginia magnet schools. They're accused of violating civil rights laws pertaining to transgender and diversity equity programs. School districts in those cities were warned to overhaul their transgender, non-binary, or DEI policies. When they didn't, by today's deadline, the Trump administration yanked that funding. NYC and Fairfax were told to change their inclusive gender identity bathroom rules and athletic program rules. Chicago was directed to eliminate its Black Student Success Plan. Because, you know, who needs Black student success, I guess, in Chicago?
Anything that's associated with lifting up minorities, you know, and those who even let's leave aside minority status in any kind of way associated with race or ethnicity. I mean, just in terms of socioeconomic status, those who need a lift up, that's all gone. That's just all going to get erased.
Electric vehicle purchases could slow down in California. And I know David Katz is here, so I'll wrap it up. Governor Gavin Newsom has reversed his decision to reinstate the state's tax credit for electric vehicles, opting instead to expand charging infrastructure. Governor Newsom saying there are billions of dollars in cap and trade investments for infrastructure through 2024, but federal funding of direct subsidies were eliminated. There's a Southern California senator taking aim at TV commercials that are louder than normal programming. It's super annoying, isn't it? State Senator Tom Umberg authoring a bill that would require streaming services like Hulu and YouTube TV to reduce that ad volume. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, Prime is the worst. Prime is the absolute. They just crank up the volume of the commercials compared to the programs.
Come on, man. The bill now on Governor Gavin Newsom's desk. He has until October 12th to sign it into law. And lastly, because I love a good mistake, a spelling error on a freeway sign in the Bay Area here in the Northern California area is a nice reminder to always double check that spelling. You know, they don't have spell check on signs. Somebody has to look at it. There's a sign on southbound 101 in Novato. They had the exit's name as San Martin Drive or San Martin Drive. The problem is that exit is San Marin. There's no T in that.
Oh my God, that's great. That's great.
The freeway exit is San Marin Drive. Caltrans officials said they put it up on the side of the freeway. It's like not only did they make the wrong exit, they installed it as well. Come on. Caltrans officials say they've been made aware of this mistake. They call it a typo. There it is. They say the freeway sign will be replaced with one with the correct spelling in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
My bad. I'm sorry.
That's a costly mistake.
Right.
I stand corrected.
Did none of the people who put that up, were they like, did they not look at the sign and go, hey guys?
That's what's so great about it. As you say, they installed it.
Drive. Like how many people looked at that and just said nothing?
You know, there's a great commercial I really enjoyed. I feel like it's for Snickers or for Southwest Airlines. And it's the person painting the team name in the end zone for the Kansas City Chiefs. Have you seen this spot, Commissioner? This is I don't know if the spot's still running now.
I do remember.
And it's so the guy finishes and he stands back and like with a sense of accomplishment, and he's left the I out of Chiefs, so it just says chefs. And I think it was it's a player or somebody runs by and goes and he realizes it. You know, this is something in the way the spot runs, and the player goes, "Hey, you left," and he goes, "Yeah, I know." Like you don't have to tell me. There it is. It's and this is the same thing as that Marin sign. You know. Yeah, and I think the announcer comes in and he goes, you know, you not want to get away. You know, Southwest has flights that, you know, it's really pretty clever. So,
well, in this case, at least they could maybe salvage some of the money they spent and put a little accent over the I, cart that thing down to the South Bay, and put it up over the San Martin exit.
I see. Well, at least you have a backup. You've got a plan B.
You've got a plan B. You don't have to throw it away. Yeah. You know, you can fix it. You can reduce, reuse, recycle. It's all about that. Wow. I just would like to mention that if you're interested in Coachella Valley coffee, which is the best, please use our discount code MARK-T. T as in Thompson, MARK-T, all together, no spaces. That'll get you 10% off at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am seeing this in the chat. Thank you for being here, everyone. We're a live show. We're 11 to 1 on the West Coast, 2 to 4 on the East Coast. And you can check us out anytime. Most people don't listen or watch live. They listen later, which you are welcome to do. We're across all major podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Randy says, I see that Trump has announced this is exactly what I said was going to happen. Remember, I've said this over and over once the tariffs were hitting the farmers. Randy says, I see that Trump has announced he's going to take some of the tariff money collected so far and give it to American farmers who have been damaged by, wait for it, Trump's tariffs. It's exactly what happened in his first administration. It's a way he can keep those farmers on his side. But the reality is farmers don't want government checks. They want businesses that were click-clacking along before these tariffs came in. So he's going to offset the tariff damage with tariff money from other things that he then will redistribute to those farmers. And that's kind of a socialism in a sense. The whole thing is so half-baked. And there you see that which we talked about many times. All right. Thank you for that, Randy. I hadn't seen it. And as I said, talked about it, anticipated it, but hadn't seen that it's actually going to happen. This is someone who is one of the leading legal analysts in the English-speaking world. He's all over the place now. Fox News Channel, News Nation. I'm seeing clips of him everywhere. But this is the crown jewel of his appearances. How about it for former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, David Katz? Hello, sir.
Great to be with you, Mark. And really, it is the crown jewel of my appearances. If I can throw in something, because I predicted that Jimmy Kimmel would be back on the air, and within a week or 10 days, Fox has decided that I am a soothsayer and handicapper, and I'm on there all the time, including they really wanted me on in New York City, where I'm from many moons ago. Today at the same time as your show, Mark. So it was agonizing.
Oh, no.
They begged, they pleaded, and so I was just on Fox. And then right after your show, I'm on News Nation because it looks like Geraldo and I are going to be like a thing.
Oh, that's terrific. You're going to go on the road with Geraldo?
No, we're going to go on the road.
You want me to set that up? I can make that happen.
We're not going to find Al Capone's vault after all these years. We're not going to empty out the Capone vault. But yes,
I love it. I love Katz. You are hot. You are hot. Well, I appreciate you slumming with us here. I am very, I'm very much wanting to get your take on something that is happening at the Justice Department and is happening in relation to James Comey and to Adam Schiff, and essentially the notion that, it's more than a notion, the idea that something has to be brought in terms of charges against all of these people who are clearly guilty in the view of the President of the United States. Not sure of what they're guilty, but I know they're guilty of something is kind of his point. And if you won't do it as a prosecutor, he's already gotten rid of one, now hired another, I'll get another. And if you won't do it, I'll get another. And the newest prosecutor, I think David Katz, has almost no experience as a prosecutor. I think she was an attorney associated with insurance.
Yeah, she was one of his attorneys down there in Florida. And, for people who remember back that far or, read about it, learned about it in school, there was the famous Saturday Night Massacre where President Nixon wanted to end the Watergate investigation. So he gave orders to his first attorney general, who was Archibald Cox, who said no and went back to teach at Harvard Law. And then the next one was Elliot Richardson, who said no. He was the deputy. He said no, and he walked. And then Robert Bork was third in line because he was the Solicitor General, the attorney in the Justice Department who argues before the U.S. Supreme Court. And Bork said he'd do it. And, of course, that was very controversial. But those were people of gravitas. I mean, even Bork. This looks like really the slapdash thing where Trump is throwing anybody in there. The first U.S. attorney that he had for the Eastern District of Virginia, and they all have these strange names like the Central District of California. It's kind of hard to figure out where they are. The Eastern District of Virginia is the part of Virginia that's closest to Washington, D.C. Alexandria, Arlington, the Pentagon are in there. It's a big time judicial district because it's right by Washington, D.C. And this is a very esteemed Republican picked by Trump to be the U.S. attorney there. And he looked at this case for months. He looked at the case against Comey, and he looked at the case against the DA from New York. And you might wonder, well, how they got Comey because Comey lived there. How did they get the lady from New York for this mortgage fraud thing? Because she had helped her niece buy a house in the Eastern District of Virginia. So there was venue for both Comey and for the niece of the she's the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. He had a venue for both of them, this U.S. attorney. At least from the reporting, he thought it was a decent case on Comey. This is the reporting. He thought it was an absolutely made up, ridiculous case. The mortgage fraud. All these mortgage frauds turn out to be absolutely not crimes. I mean, they're not just not guilty. They're just not crimes. There's nothing to indict. So I think when Trump saw that he was going to not indict the attorney general from New York, he got the vibe that this was an independent, Republican, Trump appointed, but an independent-minded, serious U.S. attorney. So he fired him. There's been back and forth, Mark. We resigned. He fired him. He fired him because he wouldn't do his bidding. And having put this lady in there without prosecutorial experience to do his bidding, it's a terrible day for the rule of law, and it's a bad day for James Comey, because you have to predict that he's going to get indicted in the next few days, because the statute of limitations runs on September 30. So that's why Trump keeps sending out tweets.
The statute of
The time
limitations
is now.
Yeah.
He's not encouraging anybody to do anything, but he says, Comey, the time is now.
I mean, the reality is that this statute of limitations that you're talking about is related to what will likely be the thing that they try to press on, which is a perjury charge. And what's odd about that, David, and this is why I'm so glad I'm talking to you, I thought perjury, to actually charge someone with perjury, you'd have to have the proof, or at least the evidence that would lead to proof before a jury that they knew they were lying about something, that it has to be a knowing lie for it to be something that someone's perjured themselves over, right?
Perjury is hard to sustain. I mean, people think, well, it's any kind of lying on the stand, but no, it actually has elements. It's difficult to prove. But again, I think most people of good sense don't see this as a question of whether they can meet all the elements of perjury. This is nothing
Right.
but this is nothing but vindictiveness. This is a malicious prosecution.
And by bringing the prosecution, David, I mean, you can screw up somebody's life to kind of have to deal with this in court.
Absolutely. And every conscientious prosecutor says, I'm screwing up someone's life if I'm wrong. Let's make absolutely sure that I'm right. That's why prosecutors, not just by their conscience, but also by rules, can only proceed in a case where they think that there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, even though the grand jury technically can indict just based on probable cause. That's why it's so stunning when those grand juries don't indict at all, because they didn't even find probable cause. They didn't even find it was more likely than not that the person had committed a crime, and they figured that out without any defense attorney. But I just think that the grand jury, without someone there to tell Comey's side of the story, I think that they will make a presentation that the grand jurors won't go no true bill and run out of the grand jury room. I think that they will, by the sufficient majority of grand jurors, return an indictment. I just think that that's what's going to happen. They'll present a case that he testified in Congress within the last 5 years. He gave testimony that his previous testimony was still true. His previous testimony is from even further back and had to do with whether there were leaks during this investigation.
During that crossfire hurricane thing, yeah, it was
it's complicated what exactly his perjury is supposed to be. But I've seen that it was something about the leaks. There's a whole thing where he has a friend from the U.S. Attorney's Office, because he's had these huge jobs. He got in the position to decide, because the Attorney General under Obama, yeah, she had to recuse herself because she'd gone to the plane and chatted with Clinton. She was so excited to meet him, so they said she should recuse herself. She was an honorable person. Even Trump's Attorney General recused my schmooze. I'm not doing anything. So she recused herself, which led Comey as the person to make the decision. That was why Comey was in the position to announce that case against Hillary Clinton, or that ongoing investigation, that investigative uptick against Hillary Clinton, like 10 or 12 days before the election. Hillary Clinton and Trump, which, along with Putin's efforts and the disinformation campaign from Russia, were the two things that really seemed to doom Hillary Clinton. Of course, people say, well, why shouldn't Trump be grateful to Comey? Comey did more to elect him in 2016 than any other person in the world.
That's what I think.
Except for Putin. But of course, Trump has a very short memory. And now he's all pissed off at Comey. And then Comey has given back some. He hasn't just gone and, hidden off somewhere. he's participated in the public conversation, as he has every right to do, and Trump
Well,
resents
in the
it.
same way that John Bolton has, and
Right.
and these people, Schiff is a high-profile pushback on Trump, and as a result, he's targeted all of them. So you think that he will actually be able to produce an indictment against Comey, flimsy though it might be?
I think that's what's going to happen. I think Comey will have to hire lawyers. He'll have the best. I mean, what an honor to represent Comey. But even so, they bring the motions. They're going to argue selective prosecution. Now, selective prosecution, you have to prove that others in a similar situation to yours weren't charged. And of course, one of the hard things is to show that the situation was that similar. You know what I mean? The government's always got some story that they weren't quite similar. And someone as high profile as him, is sort of imagine who's exactly similar to him. I mean, there's Bolton, who looks like he's also being selectively prosecuted. And I guess they're going
Bolton. They're going to go for the retention of documents that were not authorized. This is their search warrant that they executed at his home and office. Apparently, they uncovered documents there. This is, again, the stuff that's leaked out. So they're going to go after different stuff with all these people, but it would appear that their cases are thin at best, and you end up with what is basically a nuisance prosecution, but the nuisance can be significant. That's kind of what I was getting at before when I was asking you about it.
Well, Trump's going to have two huge problems of his own making. One, in the record to fight Comey's motion that he's being selectively prosecuted and picked out only because of his political beliefs and his participation in the public discourse. Trump would like to have, there are 5 Republicans that are in the same situation, 5 of my allies who are in the same situation. But of course, there are no allies of Trump's that are in the same situation. For his own allies, it's been complete forgiveness. I start, just if I can for a moment, with Homan, the head of ICE. The head of ICE, it is undisputed, took a bag with $50,000 cash in it. This man is now the head of ICE, sicking all of these unmasked people on groups of poor working people all over the country. This maniac who says that he won't follow court orders and all of the other outrageous things that he says, when Orban and Chavez in Venezuela and Turkey, I think even some of the famous fascists, when they came to power, they didn't make statements like this Homan did. They said, we're going to go out of our way to obey the law. We believe in the rule of law. You only have the anomaly of this guy saying, we don't care what courts do. We're going to do what we want. It's just unbelievable. Well, it turns out this good talking, law abiding supposed guy, back in September of 2024, the FBI was running an investigation, and some informant told them, we think that you might get somewhere approaching Homan because we think Homan would take a bribe. So the FBI set up a sting, pretended to be businessmen, and they offered Homan a $50,000 bribe, which Homan took in a paper bag in cash money. Now the administration isn't even defending that he didn't take the bag. They aren't even defending that he didn't take the $50,000. This is rich. He was entrapped. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney. Okay, the surest way to have the prosecutors roll their eyes is to say that your client was entrapped. But that's Trump's story. This man was entrapped. Somehow he was bamboozled. He was induced by whatever. Entrapment. That's his defense. No dispute that this man took back in September a bag with $50,000 as part of a sting about bribery. And the aim of the bribery was allegedly that he would get good contracts with the government to hold detainees, people who were facing deportation. And of course, billions of dollars have been distributed since he and Trump got in there. Billions of dollars. So many of these prisons are private prisons. They're making a huge profit off this immense human suffering of the would-be deportees. Anyway, so the second thing, Mark, can I just come back to this? Okay, so the second thing that Trump would like to have, besides some allies who find themselves in the same situation as Bolton and Comey, so he can say, what do you mean? It's just my enemies in public speech. No, some of my allies are. Well, none of his allies are having any trouble. Look at Homan as exhibit number 1. And the second thing that he'd like to have is a clean record where he hadn't made statements. He'd say, I'm indifferent to what happens. Well, of course, Trump is not indifferent. You look at the process by which this has happened. He's written tweets. Can't he talk to somebody? I mean, for a guy who's often compared to a mafioso, didn't he learn that you don't put it down in his Truth Social? He says, indict this guy. This guy's terrible. This guy is a criminal. And the people that he writes to people in law enforcement in his administration that they're criminals, that they ought to be indicted, that they ought to be in jail. Lo and behold, those are the people who are about to be searched or were searched like Bolton, and who, unfortunately, I believe, are about to be indicted like Comey. I don't think it could have gotten to this level if Comey weren't about to get indicted.
What it points up to me, what you've just talked about in that whole run, is it points out that you really need a cop on the beat. And if all the cops on the beat have been corrupted and they're all devoted loyalists to the king, then you don't have a cop on the beat anymore. And so justice isn't meted out in any kind of fair way, and you end up where we are. And I'm so glad you mentioned the private prisons, the private detention facilities run by private companies. That was what this bribe was about. It was about contractors who, again, they weren't real contractors, they were FBI agents, but paying off Homan in this $50,000 cash bribe in a bag at a Cava restaurant. And the idea is that Homan had guaranteed that they'd get some contracts. And now you look at these private facilities, these detention centers, they're overrun, they're understaffed, they're handled in the same chaotic way that everything's being handled in this administration in so many ways, with the incompetence and disregard for health, for medicine. And they lose a 39-year-old who we covered it in hour 1 who died. And he's a DACA recipient, been here since he was 4 years old, okay? And he died. And it was a very treatable condition he had. But he ends up dying, 39. Okay, this is again a casualty, literally, of the disregard that Homan has, and so these private prison operators have for those who are inside.
It's shameful that we didn't do something to, at the very least, help the dreamers, the DACA recipients. I told you I had the first dreamer that the LA Times called him Tony's American Dream, and from Tony's American Dream all the time it became the Dreamers. And so I've been close to this issue for a long time, and it's just really remarkable that the parties couldn't get together and at least do this, that the Republicans wouldn't at least do this with the Democrats.
Yeah, the percentages of those who have gone on to college, who are really productive members of society among that DACA group, overwhelming. I mean, far outpace anything with the general population of those who are U.S. citizens. I want to ask you about the Tylenol thing, because the Tylenol thing at the time, I thought, wow, they're making this announcement. There's no data to back it up. And Trump is even riffing about Cuba and the Amish, and it was totally made up. It's completely without any fact. And I said on the air here, I feel like there's a legal exposure here, legal exposure that the government may have, because Tylenol may, if they suffer any damages as a result of this announcement, and then the attendant, and I'll get to in a moment, lawsuits that may follow, and there have been a bunch of them now, they may be able to clap back on the government and say, hey, you guys made this announcement, it caused us real damage, and there has to be some kind of adjudication of a civil nature between us. And now Tylenol, the makers of Tylenol, reportedly preparing for this glut of lawsuits after this baseless warning about the link to acetaminophen and to autism. Can you speak to I'm glad we're speaking again, because I'm curious about the legal side of it. Without any data, they make a statement like this. What are the legal exposures associated with it?
Well, this reminds me a little bit of the Dominion voting. And when you're talking about some company that's had its brand tarnished this much, they're going to keep pursuing it. Obviously, politically and philosophically, so many people in America want there to be a calling to account, and of what's happened just already in these 9 months. of Trump, all the violations of the law, all the things that need to be undone and remedied. But when you're a huge corporation, you are definitely going to keep fighting for a redress. Because their stock went down. Then I think Tylenol stock went back up. I think the market generally thought this is BS. They thought this is not even going to affect people taking Tylenol. Tylenol is such a well-established brand, and you see these clowns up there. And then I think afterwards, Dr. Oz repudiated it or repudiated the research. An announcement this important, if you're a health official like Dr. Oz and you don't agree with this charade that just happened, you better resign. I mean, I assume Dr. Oz is planning to resign, or they're going to twist his arm and have him retract that statement. But so I think that in the short term, I think Tylenol will have more problems. I mean, the stock is certainly not going to boom. This is not a great announcement. I think they'll do okay. But the class action plaintiffs, the people who sue them, will try to piggyback on this. You know, now the federal government has come out. It's not just the president. They had the FDA issue some statement which is consistent. So now there's a promulgated FDA statement, Mark, that says this same, I think, malarkey. Bring a good expression back from Biden. Bring this old malarkey, to the fore. But that's not how it's going to be presented by the class action plaintiffs. They're going to say now there's a directive, there's a promulgated rule. We want to add to the class action, this and that. And Trump's position is based on a Harvard researcher. He's the head of the Harvard
the Harvard School of Public Health, Dean Andrea A. Baccarelli. He got $150,000 to testify against Tylenol's manufacturer in 2023, 2 years before he published the research used by the administration in that announcement linking the drug to autism. It's crazy. I mean, it was bought and paid for research.
Now, let me just say this, okay? First of all, Trump is being totally disingenuous because this was presented to the district judge, the trial judge, who had what they call multi-district litigation. All these cases against Tylenol making this autism claim. You don't want to have them in 100 different courtrooms. So cases like that get consolidated in front of one judge. So the judge that they were consolidated in front of, she heard all of this and she said, you didn't get to first base. I'm granting summary judgment. You didn't get to first base. That's not to say that what this professor said was false. It's not to say that it was, in the expression used with Comey, perjury. I'm not saying it's perjury or that it was false. But certainly you would think if you were the president and you were going to rely on it as being definitive, you might point out that the district judge who heard this, had this presented, was not persuaded that there was a causal link. You know, the whole thing is there really a causal link? And there's so many different ways to explain. Let me just give you one example. Maybe the women who are having really difficult childbirth and having pain and are taking Tylenol, maybe it's something about why they're having difficulty, right? With their pregnancy, that correlates with autism. It doesn't correlate that they took, palliative, they took the pill, right? That eased whatever was happening with them. You have to look at what was happening to them. And then there's a whole thing of genetics. Everyone knows that there's a genetics link between, getting autism. There's a genetic reason for why many kids that get autism. So the idea that there's a causal link was not established, Mark, by any of this research, but they're going to try to hang this around the head. The plaintiffs' lawyers are around Tylenol's head. Tylenol's got great lawyers. They'll fight back. And yes, I think at some point Tylenol will try to seek its remedy against the government. But generally speaking, the fact that the government, think about it, that's what everybody would do in the environmental field. Everybody in the environmental field that gets cost a lot of money by a government pronouncement or an EPA announcement would love to sue the president and the EPA. Your question raises, because there's such a dearth of evidence, is that a basis for filing? And I would have to see. I mean, that I think has to play out. How deep was the dearth of evidence? How little was the little they had? They appear to have almost nothing. They seem to have that not accepted by the court, that unpersuasive for the court.
Exactly, not accepted by the court.
Harvard expert. The very last thing, because I want to clear the Harvard expert just for a minute. This is what these guys do. These guys do become expert witnesses. He got $700 an hour. Some of these lawyers are running around charging $1,500 an hour now. He's a Harvard, professor. He's getting $700 an hour. He had however many hours that is to come up to 150,000. I'm sure the other side had experts to say the opposite, and I'm sure they got well remunerated too, Mark.
Yeah, I'll give you that just because he's a paid special witness, it doesn't mean that what he is witnessing and what he's testifying to is fraud at all or fraudulent. But when I was reading about these studies, I guess they didn't correct for siblings. They didn't correct. I mean, it's a very small group. I mean, it's like 900 people. Meantime, on the other side, you have 2.5 million people that they checked out in terms of the correlative for Tylenol and autism, and they couldn't find no data to support this specious argument. So I'm sorry. I mean, I've yet to see anything that's convincing in this way. And to just see Trump, hey, we've solved autism, we've solved the whole thing. I mean, that's kind of what he wants. He just wants to make an announcement,
I think one thing they're going to look at is whether Kennedy Jr., whether he has a financial stake in a lot of these findings and so forth. And he may end up getting sued personally, not just in his institutional capacity, but sued personally, because I think their theory may be that this is just another scam. And one of the great ways, I mean, every scammer's dream would be to have a government job that they could use to help perpetrate the scam. And I think they're just going to come around to that kind of a theory on him, and he's going to get sued left, right, and center.
Here it is. A 2024 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association involved 2.5 million children born in Sweden and controlled for compounds across these millions of samples. The research determined that there was no causal relationship between acetaminophen consumption and autism. So, I mean, again, that's in 2024. It's not like an ancient study. And, autism was around and predated Tylenol by decades. So it's so specious, and yet it can do so much damage too. I mean, I know so many parents who have kids who are on the spectrum. On the spectrum is one thing, but some are profoundly autistic, you know what I mean? And it's heartbreaking, and they'd like real research instead of this performative nonsense that these guys are involved in.
Mark, you pronounced that so well. The name of the
acetaminophen, commonly known as Tylenol.
I will leave you with this, David, because we're kind of out of time. But Democrats are going after law firms that are doing free work for Trump, and they're warning of law breaking. They may not get far in their demands for details, but key Democrats are laying the groundwork for full-blown investigations when they're back in the majority. In letters to 3 prominent law firms that capitulated to Trump's threats earlier this year by agreeing to provide him with pro bono services in exchange for him not attacking their businesses, Democrats demand specifics on the scope and duration of services that these firms are currently carrying out for Trump's pet causes. Specifically, their letters are coming in response to this New York Times report that Paul Weiss and Kirkland Ellis, 2 huge firms, are providing free legal services on a range of matters to the Commerce Department. A third law firm, and this is wild, Skadden Arps, is also reporting work for the Commerce Department. It's unclear whether this firm is being paid or is working for free. And again, it was, I believe, somebody, a Democrat, a high-profile Democrat, who said, you could be violating the law by providing legal services to the Commerce Department without compensation. So maybe you can speak to this. I mean, these are very high-profile law firms, first of all, aren't they, David?
These are 3 of the law firms that made a show of not fighting the government. These were 3 of the 10 largest law firms in America that kind of rolled over and said, we'll play ball and we'll give you a lot of pro bono services. Paul Weiss was a surprising one. Paul Weiss was sort of known as a liberal law firm, fight the establishment. And of course, they just rolled over to the establishment. Skadden Arps was very, very famous. It was the takeover law firm when one corporation would take over another. And they got to be very famous in the 70s and 80s. And then they just became a major law firm based on these takeovers. And this Kirkland and Ellis, I think, is one of the richest firms in the country. Most money per partner. I mean, millions of dollars per partner. A lot of people came to the administration from there. That Jeffrey Clark, he was from Kirkland and Ellis, the one who was going to vault over the other top officials in the Justice Department. I think some of
the
those
one who was going to become Attorney General, yeah.
Yeah, just issue the statement, and my Republican Congress members will take it from there.
Right.
Trump
It doesn't
said.
actually have to be anything going.
And this
going
Jeffrey
on.
Clark from from Kirkland and Ellis. I said that wrong. This Jeffrey Clark from Kirkland and Ellis. He's in trouble. Ironically, some of the lawyers that he was vaulting over, or would have vaulted over, were also from Kirkland and Ellis. It is a dyed-in-the-wool Republican firm. And let me tell you another problem besides what they call the Anti-Deficiency Act, which is why on earth the Commerce Department, billions of dollars, part of the government. Why does it need pro bono work? It's got its own lawyers. Are they learning secrets in there? What is the motivation really of those firms to get involved in that kind of commerce work? So that's certainly something to question. There may be nothing untoward, but it's certainly something to question. The Democrats are. But let me just one more minute on this pro bono thing. We have a case right out here in Los Angeles brought by this Kirkland and Ellis. And they have touted this, oh, it's the biggest pro bono thing in the world. Oh, they care about society so much. They're helping society, this pro bono thing. And the case is against the schools out here. And of course, the schools are a favorite target of right-wingers and right-wing law firms. And the argument is that they didn't accommodate the pandemic. They didn't have the remote learning done right. They have to have more tutoring. They have to institute this program and that program. And you kind of think to yourself, how does some hotshot millions of dollars per partner law firm know anything about the public education system? Do any of those partners send their kids to the public education system? And so then this judge threw the case out, right? And then they went to the Court of Appeals, this huge firm, and they got the case reinstated. And now they've settled with the Board of Education, whoever runs the schools out here. They finally settled, and some judge is going to determine whether it's a fair settlement, and that's down the road. And people get interested in that case certainly might want to comment on whether it's a fair settlement. The outcome of it is that the taxpayers here in LA, right, we had to pay millions and millions of dollars for that school district to defend itself against Kirkland and Ellis and that huge law firm. Meanwhile, Kirkland and Ellis says, oh, well, we're not asking any fees. See the halo? We're not asking any fees at all. It's pro bono. Is this one they're handing to Trump? Is this part of the pro bono thing? Is this the kind of pro bono that we're going to get all over the country, Mark? That they're going to fight the schools? They're going to fight these institutions? They said they were going to do three things. They were going to help the vets. Certainly this case out here, I don't know how they're helping the vets. They're going to do something about anti-Semitism. I don't think that has reared its ugly head in this case, although they try to have it rear its ugly head all over the place.
Yeah, they can find it where they want.
Right. Don't seem anti-Semitic. And I forget what the third one was, but we need to go through carefully. And I think it's good that the Democrats are starting to do that. There'll be a huge calling to account, because it's not just that they didn't get disfavored, Mark. It's that what we're looking for is, how did they get favored? How did they get sweetheart deals? How did their clients get to the head of the line or get some benefit? And of course, the Democrats want to look at Kirkland and Ellis, Paul Weiss, and Skadden Arps. We'll hear a lot more about all those firms, I think, down the road.
It's really, it's fascinating. And I'm just extorting this kind of service from these legal institutions. It's just of a kind. It's part of the strategy, between that shakedown of media and now really his own Justice Department. It's an extraordinary thing. It's all of, it's all of Project 2025. Yeah.
Can you award me a Katsadamas, one win for Jimmy Kimmel? Back
Albert, how about the Katsadamas? Yeah, I think it was impressive. The declaration that Jimmy would be back on within a week, and he was.
And that the Brooklyn show would go on. You can buy a ticket. I think you may have to stand in line or join something, but you can see him in Brooklyn next week.
Yeah.
Jimmy
and then
Kimmel,
there's a second Katsadamas caricature.
I got it, but I don't want to go over and clunkily put it in front.
No. We'll make sure we get it. That we keep it in the roster.
I sent it to you guys, and the very last thing, Mark, is and we can do this one next week, but I really want to talk about the Humphreys Executor. Well, that's a preview of coming attractions. What a tease.
What a
Humphreys
tease.
Executor.
Yeah.
But that's the case which is so in the news right now and in people's minds. Everyone's talking about it. At lunch the other day, had lunch with some people. Are they really going to rule that there are no administrative agencies? Because that's where they could potentially go if they allow Trump to remove the Democrats on those commissions. even though Congress said there have to be Democrats on those commissions, the only justification, or the likely justification, would seem to be because those commissions have no right to exist at all. So
you're talking about the firing of the FTC commissioner? Is that part of that? Or?
FTC. Okay. There's three different ones. There's a merits board one, and I have an interesting thought on it. So let's hold that for next week.
All right, we'll put that. We'll hold it in abeyance, as is said. David, thank you. We'll look for you. Where's your next one?
There's the one. There's the one by my friend.
Yeah, I love it.
By my friend at Disney. Isn't that fantastic?
I love it. That's a great shot of Katsodamus in full prediction mode. Where's your next television appearance or radio appearance?
News Nation in about a half an hour.
Oh, News Nation. All
this
right.
is crazy. I used to think, God, Mark works so hard in media. I'm having like a Mark Thompson day.
Yeah, you're busier than I am. I love it. Everybody wants you. The rehearsal's over.
Mark,
now the real stuff on News Nation.
Tim and Mark, it's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not. David, we'll see you next week, and thank you. David Katz, everybody.
Anyone who gets News Nation, it's on in a half an hour, and it's me and Gerardo. I better say
Geraldo. Wow.
Geraldo again.
Yeah, look at you. You and Geraldo. It's a thing. Let's go on the road. David Katz and Geraldo. I love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Bye-bye, David. Good stuff. Yeah. You want a Peacefully Resist t-shirt, you can find it at getmarkmerch.com alongside the Peacefully Resist mug, which I really like. Really love this mug. And there are black ones and white ones, and they're all and Born to Peacefully Resist is another mug, and the t-shirt. Which there are tons of these T-shirts, and they're really wonderful. I'm going to have one more sip of this wonderful coffee from this insanely cool mug. And very, very good. David Katz is pretty great. Thank you very much, David Katz, says Mobius 981. News Nation is owned by Nexstar, says Rick. Well, there you go. Nexstar owns a lot. I mean, this is what happens when you have, basically only 4 media companies. They're going to own everything, so you can't.
There's a lot of overlap.
Game. Yeah. It's one of the reasons that these media mergers are so bad, but bad for America. Jim Slayton says, "R.I.P. Belva Davis, barrier-breaking Bay Area reporter, first black woman on the West Coast in TV news, opened doors for so many." Jim Slayton with a $5 super chat. Yeah, really. A tough loss, but 92 years old. Wow. I sent you a video about how autistic children are questioning their mothers about Tylenol, says West Theory. Why do we need to add more torture to people's lives? Yeah, as I say, there's real heartbreak associated with this. And there are people on the autism spectrum who are fine. I mean, as I say, I've got so many friends who are on the spectrum, and they're wonderful. They even talk about it. They go, "Oh, my autism makes me really good at fill in the blank." I mean, keeping track of numbers, researching stuff, writing, whatever it might be. But then there are people who have children who are profoundly autistic, and it's heartbreaking. And so that's why playing with this crap in performative, theatrical ways, it sickens me. Teacher Lori G., who I apologized to at the beginning of the show. You can check that apology out if you missed it. Defense Secretary Hegseth has ordered hundreds of U.S. military generals and admirals to gather on short notice and without stated reason at a Marine Corps base in Virginia next week, sowing confusion and alarm. No, I saw that story. We just, I think news covered it. I think Kim may have mentioned it in her news.
Well, I had it in the show, but I don't know if we'd mentioned it yet, but yeah, 800 generals and military officials are being called to this meeting, and no one knows why. What are they going to talk about? What do they want? Weird.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything with the Pentagon scares me because it's in control of a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And then he does stuff like this. A lot of this stuff, again, is performative. I don't know. Maybe this is more than performative. Maybe there's a loyalty test. Maybe they're all going to take, these lie detector tests in front of each other about, their loyalty. And do you think I'm the greatest? And do you think, I don't mean, I know I'm kind of being on one level absurd about it, but on the other level, nothing would surprise me. They're
administration is so weird. If you can think it, it's a possibility.
They're administering lie detector tests to the FBI a lot to make sure that they're going to purge the FBI of anyone who's not loyal. Rev P says, we love the Sumatra Solstice blend and the English breakfast tea from Coachella Valley Coffee. Wow. Love hearing that, Rev P. Love that. Sarah, Kendzior is brilliant. So glad And knowing she will visit regularly is really special. Ray M. Hill with a $5 super chat. Thank you. Nostradamus. Wow. Nostradamus is back with a $5 super chat. Oh, man. Big shout out to Nostradamus and to everybody who entered our world of super chats and super stickers today. Thanks for the support. Luis with a $5 super chat says, the stable genius strikes again, helping his arch enemy's ratings go from 1.7 million viewers to 6.3 million. Donald Trump gets the Wile E. Coyote Super Genius Award. Yeah, it didn't really work out that way. I think Jimmy Kimmel would likely rather have just, not had the battle, though. Comey is a distraction from Epstein. Could be, Scooby-Doo says. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Breaking news, Tylenol researchers determined that there is a concerning link between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, there is no question that a lot of this stuff is a distraction from Epstein, but as I often say, it does two things. It serves the purpose of going after his perceived enemies while also being a distraction. So both can be true,
We had a story that you found about top GOP and White House allies now working behind the scenes to prevent this Epstein vote on the House floor, because with the voting in of Grijalva, now they have the votes they need to call for the Trump files to be released to this special House committee.
The Epstein files.
Epstein. Oh, sorry.
Right.
That was a slip of the tongue. The Trump-Epstein file.
Right.
And so now there's people at the White House and the GOP, according to CNN, working behind the scenes so that the vote won't ever even come to the floor.
This is a real push to prevent these files from seeing the light of day. And this is the thing that, again, some of MAGA has an issue with this. You guys say you're so committed to it, and now you're doing everything you can to prevent their release. That's how it works in the Trump administration, says John. There's no Epstein birthday letter. They found it. There is an Epstein birthday letter, but I didn't write it. That's my signature, but I didn't sign it. Yeah, exactly. Wow. The steak rub at Coachella Valley Coffee is tasty. Yeah. Big E61, it is. I've heard good things about the steak rub. Good stuff. Well, we had a couple of things today that were unprecedented. The loss of my signal during a conversation with Sarah, that was very tough for me. It's going to take me time to come down from that. I feel like an edible may have to be in my future. I'm really bummed.
It's not your fault. You had no control over it.
Yeah, no control, but really, Kim did rock it. I was very impressed. Heard a little bit of it. And having Sarah on was great, and having David on is great. That's a pretty terrific double play combination on this Thursday. So thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us and seeing us get that organized. Tomorrow, I believe there's a guest tomorrow in the first hour. Do you have it, Kim? That'll be another thing that we do. Kim will always handle the coming up from now on, but today it's still a scramble. We have Florida and Shore and...
Michael Shore, Michael Snyder.
No, but more. Somebody else I thought, but maybe not.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
But it's going to be a great Friday show?
Yeah, it will be a great Friday show.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.